software engineering and agile capabilities with increasing focus on lean UX and creative practices. Could I just ask you all to give a big hand to Ed?
Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you very much. What an amazing event. Fantastic for an inaugural event. So, my name's Ken Murray. I don't think I'm a UX swan. I think I'm a bit of a UX imposter, but I'm a massive fanboy, particularly of Lean UX. The reason I feel I've got the permission to talk today is through my years at Valtech, I've run a lot of projects, and we found that it's more important to make sure that we've got multidisciplinary teams, and UX is so important to be part of that. So today I'm going to describe a little bit of a very abridged version of a case study of a team I worked with, where we helped the NHS to deliver a project. So today's title is Get to Know Your Users Using Lean UX. The project was a discovery phase for NHS Choices. Can I get a quick show of hands? Who knows what NHS Choices is? A few people. It's actually nhs.uk, and it's one of the busiest public sector websites in Europe. The guys have got vanity metrics to die for. They get about 50 million unique hits a week, but they fundamentally know that there's a lot of problems with the service and the site that they've got. They've got hundreds of thousands of pages, and they fundamentally know that they're not meeting the user needs for the majority of the demographics that nhs.uk serves. So we decided to start off with a very small discovery to try and identify how we can make NHS UK better by just addressing a small section of the service. So one of the first questions is where do you start? And that was actually quite easy, because although there's a lot of challenge with it with nhs.uk, the team there are very good, they're very professional, and they've got a lot of insight, they've got a lot of analytics. So from off-site and on-site analytics, they run a lot of surveys, there's a lot of social media feedback, they do a lot of regular qualitative research. You know, they get focus groups, but they weren't doing anything with that information that they were gathering. But what this information did help us with, this insight, it allowed us to work out where to start. So another quick show of hands. Who here would like to admit having the varicella-zoster virus? Anyone had the varicella-zoster virus? So this is, you speak Latin, sir. Have you seen me do this presentation before? So varicella-zoster virus, chickenpox, and it's probably an indicative problem with NHS Choices, is the fact that if you've got a 2-year-old baby, they've got spots, they've got temperature, they're crying, you want to see if it's chickenpox, the very first thing you'll see on nhs.uk is the Latin name. That's no good to you at all. So what we're able to do is focus on chickenpox because it's a symptomatic condition, and we had a hypothesis that if we made a lot of improvements with chickenpox, we could easily transfer that pattern to measles, mumps, rubella, and actually get through a lot of the highest sort of areas of the website. So our approach was based on Jeff Cotell's book, Lean UX. Another quick show of hands, who's read this book? I really recommend it, not just because it's quite short, but it's very informative. I like it because it builds on the Agile Manifesto. So people over processes, etc. One of the key messages that comes out very early in this book is outcomes over outputs. So this book was written by Jeff and his colleagues who were just fed up of working in isolation as a UX team. They were fed up of a design agency handing off a whole set of designs that just weren't really implementable, and then handing off to a delivery team, a development team that was struggling to develop. So Jeff has created a really brilliant book with techniques. Some of these techniques we've used and described and actually hopefully enhanced. It's all about bringing UX into the multidisciplinary agile delivery team. So Lean UX is very much based on the Lean Startup principles of build, measure, learn, and then repeat. But it's also important that you make sure that, when you're repeating, you pause, you reflect, and decide. So today, I'm going to, hopefully if there's enough time, quickly describe some of the techniques we used on NHS Choices to go through these stages. Now, the first technique we did was assumption mapping. It's a really great place to start, and it's very important that you make sure you've got a multidisciplinary team, and you've got the SRO, you've got developers, UX, creative, content editors. We had about 15 people, all part of the project. We had subject matter experts, and we all had post-it notes. And the idea was you write down your assumptions about NHS choices. The key thing here is an assumption is just a declaration of what you believe to be true. So there's no such thing as a wrong assumption, but it gives everybody the opportunity to get their say and map them in this quadrant. So this quadrant is trying to sort of understand where's the highest risk and what we know most about. Now, we actually found prior to this NHS project that quadrant doesn't really work. We got rid of the axes of risk and unknown and changed it to uncertainty and proximity. The reason we did that was particularly more senior members, SROs, senior managers, would almost dictate what risk meant. We were trying to make sure that we've got a very collaborative, multidisciplinary team who's each got equal weighting in what we're trying to worry about. So getting rid of risk, we're just using the axis of uncertainty. And if you start having a discussion or an argument about how certain or uncertain something is, it really generates and helps you make sure you know which quadrant it goes in. And the idea is you want to focus on what's uncertain and what's the closest in proximity, what you should be addressing. And you focus on the assumptions in this quadrant. So I've got the real example we had from NHS choices, and I'll talk about some of the outliers. So over here, where we've got masses of uncertainty, but the proximity isn't, we don't really care about it. We've got people want to know about chickenpox vaccinations. So that's a good assumption. It's very uncertain. We didn't have any evidence to see if this was true or not, so it goes up on the uncertainty. But we had clinicians and medical staff in the team as well, and the current NHS guidance around vaccinations is it's much safer to contract chickenpox as a child rather than take a vaccination, as you get better protection against diseases in later life like shingles and chickenpox. So that we don't really want to care about that just now. Down here, something that's actually in terms of proximity is very important to us, but it's quite certain, is people are worried about being in contact with chickenpox when they're pregnant. Now we can actually tell from really good search analytics and also the analytics of the chickenpox pregnancy pages that's actually something that a lot of people are looking for information on. We've had some assumptions up here in this top right-hand corner, which are uncertain and really important to us, about people are looking for self-care advice, people are looking for care advice about their children, people will go to the GP about chickenpox. Now these are all really important because we had clinicians in the team that we've had this issue where the NHS choices cannot say, please don't bring your highly infectious child to a waiting room full of sick people with low immune systems. We shouldn't really do that, but you can't say that in case it's meningitis. But what it doesn't do is it doesn't give you the information to help you diagnose if it's chickenpox or not, or actually provide self-care advice. We went through 4 iterations of prototyping, and what we were able to do after 4 weeks, 4 iterations, is move these assumptions to a level of certainty, or back a bit because we don't really care. And at that point, we can actually start investing in coding. So 4 very quick, intense weeks where we did a lot of prototyping. There was a lot of wireframes and prototypes that were reused, but ultimately we want to make sure we had a good understanding of user needs before we continued investing in development. Now our approach to moving those assumptions from uncertain to certain was we took a hypothesis-driven development approach. And this is all about making sure that we put a bit of structure, we put an experimental format around each assumption. It's not just a whim. We want to actually put a little bit of a structure and say, we believe that, and then you experiment for these types of people, this will achieve. And then when testing is by, we will learn, so we will. And if you keep that structure, you keep that sort of rigor, it really helps. Now, this resonated extremely well with our team that we had on NHS Choices. It's a multidisciplinary team full of developers, front-end developers, back-end developers, but these guys are familiar with the user story format, which is very similar. So you've got your statement as a such and such I want to, is very similar to start of the hypothesis template. But most importantly, you've got to make sure that you're understanding what the acceptance criteria is, what the test is you're trying to achieve. And from this, we were able to iterate through 4 iterations very, very quickly. We also used the concept of task-based personas or proto-personas. Personas are a particular bugbear of mine. They become a cottage industry. Has anyone seen it where people spend weeks and weeks creating really polished personas that actually become an output rather than an outcome? For us, we spent less than 15 minutes deciding what our personas that we were really caring about. We wanted to know about parents whose children had chickenpox at the time. And we wanted to know that so we could go into our user research phase. And it's all about making sure we understand user needs, but for this particular project, what was important was the user needs state. Now, this wasn't going online and buying your car tax. This is very important that we actually did our user research with people who were in as close to an actual user needs state as they would be when they were using the service. So we actually went and recruited parents whose children had chickenpox at the time, because we wanted to try and make sure we had the same reaction and understanding of how they would be using the system when they were using our prototypes. And at this point, it was time to get out of the building. There's several techniques to user research. Key thing is literally get out of the building. We chose to do lab testing. Guerrilla testing is another really good technique, but because we had quite a niche persona that was expensive to recruit and actually get at the right time, we couldn't afford to just turn up at a library or a coffee shop and expect to find parents whose children had chickenpox. So we recruited them, we brought them along to the lab. Lab testing has quite a few benefits. What we found is we actually brought the entire team behind the glass for user research sessions. And what we find is the team start to build empathy. It's very important. So in front of the glass, so we have our skilled user researcher, and they are joined by one other person, and we rotated the scribe. We find that it's very important to make sure you've got somebody else in the team capturing the insights. And when we do our Lean UX user research, we make sure that we write down every bit of insight the participant gives us on a single post-it note, which we use for affinity sorting. But the importance of getting the team involved is so key. This is a quote from the head of HR at Google. I think it's called something a little bit more modern than head of HR, but Laszlo Bock, even a small connection to the people who benefit from your work totally improves productivity, it makes people feel happy. Now, we do a lot of work with GDS, and one of the GDS mandate guidelines is that each team member in your multidisciplinary team does 6 hours of user research a month. That doesn't sound like a lot, but actually when you try and put it into practice, it's quite difficult to do, but it's so important. Show my colours here. So user research is a team sport. Everybody's got to get involved. Can I just ask a quick question? Who here has actually been at a user research session with real users testing something that they're part of building? That's good to see. Now you find that with developers, actually, they don't always get the opportunity. So it's very important to make sure everybody's involved. But it's important to make sure you've got superstars. The user research is an absolute own skill. It's very important. We found on NHS Choices, it's, you know, anyone can lead an interview, but to do it really well takes a lot of experience. What we find is that when you're doing the interviews, you find that the recipient and the participants start asking you questions back. And it's very easy to actually just ask their questions. And you're not there to try and help them work out what chickenpox means. You're there to try and work out what they know and what they don't know. And the thing that I found fascinating was you get a lot of stupid insight, a lot of dangerous insight, a lot of people that were adamant that they had to bring their child to the doctor's waiting room, even though they knew it was chickenpox. And just being able to smile, nod the head, continue the conversation as quickly and as efficiently as possible is a very important skill. What you find is if you're writing down insight post-it notes, you need to do affinity sorting. This is, we actually had another wall here, so this is half of the insight captured from 6 user research sessions done in one day. We find that you have a maximum of 7 or 8. You start to get diminishing returns. The more people you talk to, the difference in the answer become less and less. So we normally do about 6 to 8 sessions after a particular set of hypotheses. The key thing here is to do a sense-making exercise called affinity sorting to understand from that chaos how to get some order. I'm not sure it's going to show up very well, but what you do is, and it helps if the whole team are behind the class, the whole team are actually seeing the sessions, and it becomes very quick and efficient for everybody to start grouping the insight into themes. You name the themes, you give out an identification. At that point, you start identifying actions of how you can address that particular theme. And what you've effectively done, you start to prioritize your backlog instantly for your next iteration of user research. So very quickly, you've gone through a full day worth of user research, spend about an hour doing the affinity sorting. You actually know what you're doing for the next iteration. We found it was very important to advertise the cadence of user research and prototyping. So we started off user research first. We didn't have any prototypes, we just had topic guides based on the first assumption mapping exercise. From that first user research session, we were able to do our affinity sorting, get the actions, understand with a bit more confidence what it is we need to prototype. So we spent 3 days quickly prototyping. I did this presentation a few months ago in Manchester, and someone thanked me because they said, the prototypes, they are an outcome, not an output. Do them on whiteboards, on pieces of paper, in PowerPoint. You know, this isn't a polished, creative group that you're trying to produce. You just want something to get the message across of what you're trying to prove in your assumption. And then keep the cadence and go into user research prototyping. We did this for 4 weeks. And the key thing was we were trying to fail fast and fail early, build confidence in our assumptions and our hypotheses that when we actually came to build the real software, we know what we're doing. Now that's a difficult message to say. Has anyone said that to their boss? So an easy way to say the same thing is learn fast, learn early. You do a little bit of investment up front to make sure that you have a clear understanding of what you want to build. Now this is quite an abridged version. There's only sort of 20 minutes to talk. Scott and I, we run this as a sort of an hour and a half, 2 hour session where we have collaborative exercises around assumption mapping and affinity sorting and hypotheses. But we just don't have time for that today. So as a little bit of a summary, what we do is you get an understanding of what you believe user needs are. You create your assumption. From your assumption, you identify and build structured hypotheses. You take inputs like personas, but don't make a cottage industry out of them. Once you've got your hypotheses, they're either hypotheses results in a question, prototype, a real piece of working software, something disapprove. And at that point, you do your test. You've got the test. You then do your user research, your analytics, and you're bringing back data. You know, at this point, it's pure raw data. There's no analysis done. You start to do your affinity sorting, and it effectively becomes insight. And at that point, in Lean UX, you've got your insight. You can choose, do I know enough about that particular hypothesis that I can actually put it in the product backlog and start building the software? Or have I learned a bit more? Do I need to do a bit of revision and addition, or do I need to just kill it and go back to the assumptions there? So it's a case of bring it all together. So for NHS choices, we started off with supporting evidence. We did 4 one-week iterations. As we were going along, we increased the fidelity of our prototypes from basic questions to bits of paper designs to PowerPoint to real working HTML by the time we got to the 4th iteration. And what we were doing is we were getting increased learning and confidence in what to build. And that meant by the end of this 4 weeks, we were able to have a very clear picture of what we wanted to build in our alpha phase. So I may have overrun, but any questions?
Yeah, so thank you so much, Nibbles. Anyone have, we've got 5 minutes for questions? The one at the corner. Cheeky, Phil.
First of all, respect to you that you've managed to work with the DWP for 2 years and so on. How did you get around the it can't be done technical constraints, we will deliver this in the next 3 years constraints that you usually get when you have public sector?
So there's another presentation all about that. Literally there is. So we did have that challenge around a very stubborn architect, SharePoint 2003, and his ability to make us allow us only to do CSS and HTML changes. But with the correct senior escalation, trust from senior management teams, what we sometimes do is these techniques, these examples, we make sure senior stakeholders are involved. They understand, they do assumption mapping. They understand really what they need to address. And when they do the user research and actually sit behind the glass and see the effect that not doing this or doing this has on real users, and they create empathy with people, we find that all ridiculous constraints disappear. Now, it does require trust. Sometimes you have to be lucky with your senior stakeholders. Sometimes we have to run mock examples and get them to sort of partake in this, but it also helps. I've been working at DWP off and on for 12 years as well, so people know me, people trust me, and yeah, building up trust is the main thing you have to do there. But trust by example. So spending 1 week with their money to get an immediate outcome is a fast return compared to an architect who might say, let me go away for 3 years and I'll come back and do it. They see change in a week, they're usually very impressed. Does that help?
Any other questions? So how do you
There's a number of ways of doing that. For this particular scenario, we actually used an agency. Some of the insight that was done up front was by Ipsos Mori, so they had connections with recruiters who could go and hire niche cohorts of people. But that was why the personas exercise was very important. We had to very quickly work out who we needed to talk to. And what we actually found out after 2 iterations is we were getting a lot of insight from parents whose children had chickenpox at the time, but we needed to talk to parents who had young children of an age that might get chickenpox but didn't have it, because we wanted that real raw reaction. We found that maybe some of their real experiences were skewing the insight we were getting. But yeah, revisit your personas, don't spend too much time on them, and just get the feedback loops solid and react to them.
Fantastic. I think we've got time for probably one other question before we move on.
Yes. My question is, how do you work with clients in an agile way when the client is not financing in an agile way? If there is a limit, in the budget, there are deadlines.
Yes.
How much can you iterate? How much time you can spend?
So one of the things we do is we sell as an offering a concept of inception or discovery. And we try and keep it between 2 to 4 weeks. So it's a very finite piece of time. And our customers have been burned in the past by people wanting to do 12 weeks, 16 weeks. And if you go in and say, right, we're going to do it in 4 weeks, and we meet with them first, we talk through the examples. We run through mock examples with them. Maybe spend half a day. We've got fantastic silverback user research videos where, without sounding too exploitative, we've actually made people cry. So we've actually given them legislative DWP questions where people have been so appalled that they've sort of burst into tears. And you show how powerful and how important the quick feedback loops are. And you find that you don't have that problem, especially when it's a small, finite amount of time and money. They're used to spending a lot longer, a lot more, with less view of what their outcomes are going to be.
Fantastic.
So one more question.
we are running slightly behind. Who's got another question? Okay.
Any what, sorry? Yes, we have. So some type of user research we will play, and the importance of policy not being involved. But we've had situations where in carers allowance, one carer brought his wife with not Parkinson's. I can't remember. It was a very distressing disease, and it was really distressing to actually watch. It's not something we'd share, but the stakeholders needed to see it because it actually meant that they were making the right decisions for the users.
Okay, sorry. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Brilliant.
I'm saying the next half.
All right. We're going to see if another half an hour if we get any more. Okay, we've got Antonia. Antonia is a user experience consultant. Right, with a master's in design, innovation, and a B. Sorry. Yeah. Okay, fine. Yeah. Engineering. Sorry. Let me concentrate. So she's passionate about helping others build their dreams. She also co-founded Coding London to teach key digital skills to people of all ages working with the support of Google. Makers Academy, Code Academy, and Pluralsight. Antonia, founder, aren't you? Also founded platforms for women and works with Digital Women UK to support and encourage women in tech. She spent over 6 years driving change by design for FTSE 100 and Fortune 500 companies in the UK, and is now, when she's had the time, building a digital publishing platform for children's storybooks in the UK's first startup accelerator. So, not much, but can we all welcome Antonia?
I would like to say thank you so much to Leah and Enor for putting this together, because this has always been something on my mind to give back to the UX community. 6 years ago when I started as a UX person, there was nothing to support us, and you just had to go out there into the ocean and find how to get things done and also learn on the job. So I would have to say, big, we have to give them a round of applause. Okay, so my name is Antonia. I'm going to talk about 3 things here today. I don't have a bunch of slides to show you because I didn't know how to put all the stuff into slides. But I'm going to talk about my personal UX journey, how I started and where I've come to, and also just what we have here, the user experience of UX things. I mean, we always talk about how we face outside customers and users, but do we really think about ourselves? So I will talk about why this is important to think about. It is something that I am still thinking about and formulating thoughts around and trying to see it in practice for next year. So it's something that I would really like you guys to think about as you're maybe entering into UX things for the first time or finding a new job, transitioning, and things like that. So to start off my UX journey, and I'll also talk about why I want to help UX-LING as well and what I do to help UX-LING. I'm kind of still a UX-LING myself. But anyway, 6 years ago, I came from Nigeria to do a master's in design here in the UK. I'd already started designing as a graphic designer, visual design, things like that. But I'd been in engineering school, so I was an engineer as well. I came here to do a master's in design, which was a multidisciplinary program, and we had different people from different backgrounds coming together to design. And I was introduced to a lot of things about UX, research, and all that kind of stuff. And it was wonderful while in school. But I started to transition from school into the working world. It just seemed very, very strange. It was like a double culture shock because, frankly, the things we enjoy, because we were working on company products while in school, it wasn't like that in companies when I transitioned, and it just seemed like people didn't even know what UX was about. So I think I was lucky in a way to be one of those who pioneered UX in these 2 different companies. I was like the second ever UX person in their companies, and we did a lot around educating people about what UX was and things like that. But how did I even get into these companies? So one thing that we used to do back then was to just go into UX meetups. You don't know who you're going to talk to, you don't know what's going to come next, but you just wanted to learn and you wanted to see how other people did UX in their companies. That was one of the reasons. And through going to different meetups, UX meetups, I got to meet a lady who offered me an internship in a company, sort of Baxter, and I definitely owe a lot to her, and she helped me through that process. Another thing I did was to proactively seek out a mentor. I just Googled like UX person something, and I got in touch with a guy who I sent an email, and I said, you know what, I'm starting out in UX here in the UK, strange territory, strange thing. Everyone's asking, what is UX? How do I get things done? How do I even tailor my CV to prove that I am, worthy of being in your company? And he gave me a good guideline, and it was great because if I didn't meet him, if I didn't go out to seek a mentor, I probably would still be stuck in, I don't know, somewhere. But those are some of the things that you have to think about as a UX person as you transition. You need to be proactive in seeking out this kind of opportunities, and there are a lot. I mean, UX is hot now, and there's a lot of people who have been in the industry. So I would definitely advise you to be proactive in seeking people out who can help you. After starting out and going through journeys as a junior, educating my teammates, developers about UX, I started to think about what next, what could I do for other people? And I moved on from a company. I'll just give a quick story which leads into the UX user experience of UX names. One thing I realized was a lot of us talk about empathy. I mean, you don't see UX, it doesn't talk about, oh, something, have empathy for the users. But I realized that there wasn't a lot going on with empathy in our teams. And I just wondered, I thought that was really strange because we need to have those qualities as part of us, not just as something we wear because we're going out to some users or customers. We needed to have that within our team because that was the only way we were going to design and create things that made sense, that were great for people out there. It does not work backwards. You need to have a team that cares for each other before you start to think about the users. So my thought to you and my what I think you should think about is, how can I care for the people that I see before me every single day? Is that before I think about those that I don't even see, the users out there. You don't see them, but what of those that are before you? So there was a team I worked with. One of the first things that the visual design colleague told me when I walked into the company for my first day on the job said about my boss. He said, this guy is a difficult guy. And I thought he was joking. And along the way, I realized that it was true. And it just seemed a bit of a mismatch where someone who is a UX person hasn't learned to care about people around them, and it was just about the job. And I just felt like that's sort of kicked off in my mind, and I kept thinking about it through the years. And luckily I went to another company where the team was one of the best teams I've worked in, and they were a diverse team. Everyone was quite mature. They wanted to do the jobs. They cared about each other. It wasn't so much about what a certain group of people wanted to do in the teams. It was great, and I thought that yes, it is possible to have a team where people care about each other, and you would do great work if that happens. So how do you even, what can you do to make that happen? Again, I think we have to be proactive about when we're interacting in our teams, not just with your friends, you need to care about those that you maybe not have so much of a connection with. So one thing that I would say is, for example, one thing that affected me personally was because I am a bit introverted, and I know a lot of people share that. Sometimes I just feel like, oh, this is who I am. I'm doing my job. I have my headphones on. You know, that is it. And I didn't realize how much the social side of things in the UK, for example, was a key part of your work. So it wasn't just about getting into work and doing the work or being the great UX person. You had to socialize in a way that was foreign to me. And after struggling with that for a while, I asked one of my mentors, and she said, do you know what, instead of allowing things happen to you, you need to be proactive in telling your teammates or inviting them into your world. So suggesting things like, hey, let's go to a place to eat, even if it's a Nigerian restaurant or something. You know, just be out there and invite people into your world. Do not wait for things to happen to you. And I realized that that was, you know, amazing advice to have, because then people would start to see you as an open person, even if you were not closed off or anything like that. But when they see that you care about them and you care about sharing yourself and sharing your life within a team, they invite you in, and you know, it just makes everything work better. So that is one thing. Another thing is about sharing your experiences, learning, sharing knowledge. There's a lot of times UX teams in a company, they tend to be really into, like, you're just in the UX team or you're just in the design team, and you don't talk to customer service people, marketing, things like that. You need to allow yourselves move away from this sense that you are an elite team. I remember a company I worked in, the HR person there said, you're part of this you know, elite team and this and that, you need to, and I was like, we're designers, yes, we think in a different way, but we're not that special. Everybody contributes to UX in the company, every single person. So we need to allow ourselves share the knowledge we have and take knowledge from other people. For example, change management in one of the companies I worked for, there was a guy who was like, what do you guys do? And I explained a bit about it to him, and it was like, oh, I see a lot of touch points that, you know, that we could do something together. And I just wondered, why haven't we been talking to this team? They have a lot of skills that will help our work as UX. So that's another thing I would implore you to, if you're in any UX team out there, try to share knowledge with those outside of your teams. It's really important to have, and the earlier you start with it, the better. So moving on, my whole journey working in different companies, I've worked across product design, game design, enterprise design, which was one of the last things I did. I decided to take a time out this year to just pursue some things that have always been on my mind, one of which is about helping people and giving back to the community. So you can't be in UX or in any kind of industry and not give back. You should really have that sort of mindset to want to give back, because people have helped you along your journey, and you should try to help others as well. You may not have to take a break like I did. I just felt I needed it. I needed that time. I needed that space to figure out things for my next steps. And one of them, what I've been doing this year, is to help people learn different things. So one of them is UX. So I started a UX workshop for beginners and decided to, you know, just introduce them to the basics of UX. Where did it start from? How did it develop across the years? Who was the first UX designer? And things like that, just to introduce them to something as a base. And I think that some folks who went to my workshop are here, I don't know, I think I see somebody. But it was just that sense that I wanted to help people as I've been helped, even if there wasn't any formalized sort of group. It was just something that I needed to give out as well. And then also teach people how to code. I wanted to learn a bit about coding. So I started out with running Code Academy's meetup group here. And it's just been great to see people come together and collaborate and learn things together. And I realized that if I'm going to move forward and do anything in UX, educational technology is an area I definitely want to be a part of. That is certain for me. And that, just that sense that I could help people build their own dreams and goals from their platforms is something that has always been a thread in my life. And so from my start as a UX junior person all the way through, that has been a thread, and it's something I'm exploring much more of. So definitely I would implore you to think, as I'm thinking as well, of how we can help ourselves within our teams, how we can take those skills that we're learning and we're putting out there into the products we're creating, the consumers and users that we're focusing on, how we can use that for our teams and for ourselves, and let it be a part of us. If you're talking about empathy, let that empathy show wherever you are as a UX person or as just a regular person. And think about your teammates, care for each other, not just your friends that you form within the teams. Learn, share with each other. So that is basically what I'm here to talk about, just who I am, where I came from, why I like to help people, what I'm doing to help people. I do mentor a number of people as well, UXers, and just what you should be thinking about for 2016. Think about the user experience of your UX skills. Thank you very much.
Really important points. I'm sure we've all worked with, different teams, and there's been different dynamics within those teams. And it's true, some people are slightly more difficult to work with than others, but ultimately there are lots of reasons why somebody may come across as difficult. Same with difficult stakeholders, for example. There's often reasons as to why somebody comes across in the way they are. So having empathy for your teammates, you tend to have empathy for users, and you also is really. Any questions, Franklin? I have a good question.
Okay.
When you have worked with people in teams, kind of what sort of traits have you found, and how do you approach that? Because some people must be like, actually, I'm doing my own thing, and not, some people can be, I guess, come across as if they're slightly possessive over their title within their role. Kind of, I'm not a designer, but I have worked with one visual designer who quite quickly told me to back off there because you can't teach design. When I dared to show any interest in workshop, even though I'm very dangerous near it. But I was just wondering what kind of experiences you've had and how you've combated those.
I haven't had experience within my UX team, but I remember working with a developer, and I was just asking, let's share ideas about what you think about something. And I was like, just sketch what you're thinking about. And he was like, that is not my job to sketch. And it really blew me away. But I realized that for some people, you need to give them space and time. But you need to also show that you're open to learning as well. Because that is only when they will be able to come to you. Some people are very open and they would proactively ask you questions and things like that. But you need to as well show yourself as someone who's open to learning from others. And they would come to you.
And I guess other people have different boundaries. Sometimes it takes a little longer to sort of figure out what they are when you're in a new team. So thank you so much.
I think one last thing. Oh, okay.
Oh, no, go ahead. No, please, go ahead.
So how do you transition into being a mentor?
Sorry?
How do you transition into being a mentor? Because you mentioned that you're mentoring people.
Yeah. I'm not sure if it's like a transition. I feel like all of us, we have something to share. We have some knowledge that some other people don't have. So it's not about mentoring someone. Mentoring is not just about a senior person and a junior person. It's also about peers. So I don't know. You've had and seen things that I haven't seen. I only know a lot about Nigeria and the UK. I don't know much about any other place. So there are other things that people who are still your peers can help you learn about. And I think that as UX and as the internet grows and the context, as we start designing across a lot of different places, that context that everyone brings from different cultures is really important. So you can just have, if you're interested in it, it's not, by force or anything. Just, seek out people that want to share that knowledge and help each other to grow.
Do you find that, are there any projects that you would say require less emotional investment when designing UX? I don't know much about it, or So are there projects where you feel like you have to be more emotional and other projects where you say that you don't have to be so emotional just like getting the job done? Would they all require some connection with the research and everything like that process?
I think definitely you require more, you require that sort of emotions and really connecting with people because it just helps for any kind of project, but definitely some projects like a healthcare project, personally, it's hard for me to do a lot of that because I get very emotional and I could end up crying at some point. So there's some things that I would, try to step back a bit from, but I do think that generally you need to communicate that, you need to have that connection with people. You just need to kind of
So all projects you would say would require some level of...
Yes. As long as you're interacting with people.
Wonderful. I think we're going to have a break. Is there any other questions from Antonia? Okay, fantastic.
Thank you.
So we'll have a quick 10-minute break. Thank you again.
If you use a smoker, the smoke belt out that way instead of having to go all the way down.
We're going to read the 8 o'clock.
So out there on the left.
How you feeling? How you excited? Yeah? Good luck. Just want to see if there's anyone smoking. So you can
Sorry. This feels good. Hi. We're going to just introduce our next speaker. So could I start with take a seat? Can we do the lights?
Yep.
Scott, there's nobody outside. Sorry. Okay. So I would like to introduce Sarah Young. Sarah's an ex-recruiter, turned designer who didn't enjoy her job, but I love it, and had a midlife crisis. Although she now literally told me 30 seconds ago the fourth life crisis.
Don't say you're too young for it. Make me feel old.
I saw something on LinkedIn the other day that said about quarter-life crisis and then midlife, and it said the ages.
So anyway, so Sarah took the point to go to university at UX. She worked in the field, I remember you. She worked in she's worked in the field at future platforms and filters. In her spare time, Sarah is also into scuba diving. She is a paddy dive master. That's really, really, really fantastic. A snowboarding novice, and in her spare time works on endless design projects for friends and family. A lot of people relate to. So I'd like to give a big hand to Sarah, who's going to talk to us about her midlife crisis.
So yeah, basically, start with who I am. So as Leah said, I was a recruiter before. Had a bit of crisis. And then decided to go to uni and get into UX services and how it came about and stuff. So I'm currently working as a UX and UI designer at Future Platforms. Been there since August, so only 4 months. So relatively new. But yeah, enjoying it so far. I started off, everyone at school was applying for universities and stuff. I already had a job, didn't know what I wanted to do, quite liked having the money, as you all do. So decided just to carry on working because I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I handed my CV out in the local shopping centre, got a job at Phones for You as a salesperson, and that's how I fell into sales. So from there, I went into recruitment. Started off in aerospace recruitment, then moved into education recruitment, recruiting teachers and things. I knew I wasn't enjoying recruitment, and that was one of the reasons why I moved. I thought going to a different company, then it might be better. Still wasn't the case, and my education company were sending out invites for teacher drinks and loads of different events and things, and were asking me to design them. Admittedly on Word, so they weren't great, but I really, really enjoyed it and really hated it when my manager said to me, get back to work. So decided that I needed to do something about it. So I applied for uni part-time, had my interview coming up and things. Also the building that I worked in, there was a designer down the hallway. Used to go and sit in his office and just see what he was doing. It was much more interesting than what I was doing. And yeah, applied for uni, but because I didn't have any of my schoolwork, so I didn't think I was going to go to uni. They said to me do a portfolio course, and I thought it was also not meant to be. And someone I used to work with at Phones for You said to me, I'm recruiting for my team, and we recruit for UX designers, and I thought at least I still get to work in the industry a little bit. So went over to work for him, found out about UX and everything, and really, really enjoyed it. And I'm seeing all the cool work everyone was doing, all their portfolios and everything. So just decided that it was something that I wanted to do. I still was really interested in it. So I had my crisis, and yeah, decided recruitment definitely wasn't for me. So I told work that I wanted to do an evening class because I'd always enjoyed design and being creative and things. So I had to leave at 5 o'clock on Monday, and just kept telling them, no, I'm not leaving, I'm not leaving. And yeah, so did that, found it really interesting, applied for uni again, decided that if I was going to do it, I was going to do it properly, so I applied for a full-time course, which petrified me because I've been working full-time for those how many years. So yeah, applied, got in through clearing, and I knew my work still wasn't up to scratch because it was literally just a portfolio course, but they took a chance and I got in, so really, really happy. So yeah, that's the next slide. So went to university, absolutely loved every minute of it. One thing I would say, anyone who's not happy in their career and stuff, you're not stuck in it, you can go to university and really, really enjoy it. So that's one thing. One thing I did find was that design is so subjective, because I just did a graphic design course, not a HCI course. It was a case of one teacher would say, yeah, that's really good, and then another one would say, I like it, but change that thing, and one thing that the other person said they liked. So, and I kept thinking that UX isn't as subjective because it's testing and research and all that sort of thing, and that's one thing that I really enjoyed about the design process. So I was still thinking, yeah, I want to do UX after uni. A lot of people at uni didn't know what it was, so I spent a lot of time explaining it. It's not something that they covered at uni, which was really weird. Although on my in my third year, one of the last projects that I did, my tutor knew about UX and actually helped me do the project in a more UX orientated way, just so I had something for my portfolio, which was really, really good. So while I was at uni, I hassled a lot of people on LinkedIn. Some of you may have been hassled by me. I worked at 3 companies while I was at uni in internships. So the first one was purely graphic design based. It was after my first year of uni. It was myself and a friend. We went there and it was a startup, and it was a good and a bad experience at the same time, because they were very much, it was a mobile payment app. And they were very much, oh, Starbucks have got this video, can you make it like Starbucks? It's like, no, Starbucks' video, we can't do that, we can't copy them and stuff. So it was really difficult because a lot of the time they didn't really know what they wanted us to do the same as other people and stuff, so it was quite difficult. And while we were there, and since, I think they changed their name about 4 times, so the company, all the work we did isn't relevant at all. They would change names, so it was good to know sort of how to manage your expectations and stuff, because as a junior especially, if someone comes to you and says do this, you know it's not right, you need to figure out how to say it and stuff, so that was really good. Then I went back to the guy I used to hassle down the hallway when I was in education recruitment, and said to him, can I come work with you for a bit? So he was really good. Again, I worked for free, he just paid my expenses to get there and stuff, but he was amazing. The amount of stuff that I learned from him was really, really good. Worked with him a day a week for a year while I was at uni, so that was really good. And yeah, so from there, I went and did another internship. This time it was a UX internship at Lab 49. It was financial industry, which I wasn't necessarily as interested in, but they were really, really good as well. Another lot of people that I hassled, I used to hassle the recruiter a lot when I was in recruitment, and I said to him, as you never gave me any jobs, can you give me a job now? So that was quite good. Yeah, so a lot of internships, that's one thing that I would say would be really, really good to do. So from there, I had to find a job. So one of the things I found really weird about uni is a lot of the people were saying to me, do you not want to take some time off over the summer? And I was like, no, I need to get a job. I have some time off when I have annual leave for my job. And they were a bit confused. They were all sort of applying for jobs that were advertised. And I was like, well, if there's no jobs advertised and there's people applying, why don't you just message the manager and ask if they can see you and things like that? And none of them really understood. So I ended up getting people to hassle people. I hassled a lot of people on LinkedIn myself. Again, I had a whole spreadsheet with all the companies. It was split up between sort of agencies and client side as well. I was really stalkerish, so it's quite bad. But yeah, and there was a lot of people that come back to me that were really, really good and said that we haven't got anything at the moment, but let me meet you for a coffee and I'll give you some advice. So everyone was really, really, really good. I had went to a networking event for a recruitment agency actually, and a lot of people found out that being friendly students and they were coming over and asking us loads of questions. And we met a guy there that was amazing and mentored me and my friend and was really, really good. He was a little bit harsh sometimes, but it's what you needed. Because the thing, if you say to people, what do you think of my portfolio? And they always go, yeah, it's really nice. That's not what you need. You need people to go, this is a bit shit, Sarah. Like, go and change this. So, and there was another company that I messaged, and I went in to see them as well. And he wrote me like a 3-page Word document about feedback from my website and stuff. So it's really, really, really good. So one thing I would say to people is if they've not got a job and they say, let's meet for a coffee, don't say, well, you can't help me, because they really, really can. So that's definitely something that would help. So from there, I ended up getting my job at Future Platforms, which was, funny enough, through a recruitment agency. So it wasn't through my hustling in the end, but I think that would have paid for the day. Yeah, so from there, I mean, what I do differently, there are a few things. I'm quite happy with how I did it a lot of the time, just in that I was being proactive in contacting the hiring managers directly. So I think if you do always just apply for the open jobs, there's going to be so many people applying for the same jobs. But if you contact someone directly, find a company you really want to work for, then that's definitely going to help. Another thing is we use Azure at Future Platforms, and I always said, oh no, I can't pay for a license and stuff. There's trials. If I'd have downloaded a trial and in my free time done some YouTube tutorials and things like that, then that would have definitely given me a head start. So if you can go in and say, I can't use Azure or whatever you use, then that would be a really, really good idea. And another thing is just to go to meetups quite a lot, because they really do help you get to network, meet people, and just find out how other people are carrying out the process and things, and just learn quite a lot from that. So that's pretty much it. That's great.
It's brilliant. I love the way you kind of just sketched it without everything. Does anyone have any questions? Yeah?
Do you ever find that anyone get really annoyed in contact the hiring manager, for example?
When I was a recruiter, yes. Yeah. When I was looking for a job, no. I did get blocked from LinkedIn about 3 or 4 times just for spamming people. But I get messages about, I don't know what's happened, I'm just looking for a job, and they go, okay, well, I'm not. So, yeah, I think a lot of people in the industry have been really, really helpful. So anyone, even if they're not looking, really, really helpful, because they all started somewhere. So most people, there were quite a few people who just didn't reply, but I'm guessing they were busy and stuff. So, but no one was horrible or anything. So,
any others? Yeah. You said that you were studying recruitment. So, but when you decided to like to next, you started looking yourself. How come you didn't try two recruiters?
I did speak to recruiters as well, but a lot of the people, I don't know anyone who's looking at the moment, a lot of the junior roles need a year's experience. If they're going to a recruiter, I find that a lot of people won't pay a recruiter for someone who's a graduate. Although I went through Give a Grad Go, they were a recruitment agency, and they're the ones that got me my job at Future Platforms, and they were really good. So, but yeah, I found there wasn't as many jobs on the market as I wanted, so I was just.
Hi, you've gone from recruitment to UX, but I've always had the idea that we need a lot more UX people in recruitment. What do you think about that? I mean, I think that a lot of the skills in UX can be applied to recruitment, and just the fact that we need to be able to have that sort of guide, you know, to monitor the quality of UX people who come through. So I just wonder what your thoughts.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's quite funny because I've had quite a lot of people in UX message me asking for help about recruitment because they don't think the recruiters doing it very well. So what can we do to set this up? And then I've had a lot of recruiters who've gone, I really want to work in UX. Can you help me get into UX? So it's so weird that everyone's sort of switching over. But yeah. So yeah, there are a lot of people within the UX industry that are trying to do that as well. I think for some people, there are some really good recruiters and there are some that aren't as good. So people just want to understand the roles and things. So a lot of people in UX seem to be taking it for themselves.
There are also a lot of recruiters that contact me asking advice as to how to move into UX.
Yeah.
What they do,
Yeah.
like loads.
Boxes of arrows, right?
So easy.
Colouring in the
That's
lines.
right, exactly. Jack.
Last question, sorry. If you could say to recruiters, one thing to improve the user experience of recruiting from a UX perspective, what would it be?
Get back to people.
Yeah.
Definitely get back to people. Yeah. I think, yeah.
What about understanding the difference between visual design and content development?
Oh, yeah.
I think there was a question over here. Someone with a hand up for them. Please.
I was just going to ask you, you mentioned that you did some internships.
Yeah.
And you kind of jumped over that bit a little bit. I'd like to talk about that. And also, the people who aren't able to leave it, they do on financially or because of time, what the recommendations would be?
I mean, my internships were all sort of unpaid, just because that's all people seem to be offering. I did get travel for something, but yeah, it was mainly unpaid. But I was quite lucky because it was during holidays from uni, so I still had my student loan to keep me going. I was working in pubs in the evening, so it wasn't really a problem. But people who can't do the internships, I would say, just set yourself specific projects. And do them, find people in the industry, find feedback and stuff from there, and just do specific projects that you set yourself, or even someone in the industry, get them to set you a project or something, and work on it that way.
Any other questions? Yeah? Hi.
Sorry, question. Do you feel that having to be able to do internships is the best way to gain experience? Because I've had a few internships really good ones, and they come back to me saying, we really like you, we're going to keep you on our profile and everything, we're going to get back to you, but all we are asking from you is to get a bit more experience. But how do I get that experience when I want to give that chance?
That's the thing. Yeah, everyone. It's literally, yeah, we've got a job, but it's a junior role, but we need experience for it. It's like, I'm a graduate, but you need experience. How do I get experience? Well, you need someone to give you a job as well, and you give me a job. Yeah, it's literally, just for me, it was internships. As annoying as it is, like literally some of mine, like the last one tonight was literally for 2 weeks, so it wasn't long.
So how can I go about finding an internship?
Just message people. Just literally find companies that you like. Find anyone on, again, LinkedIn with like UX as a job title or something. Normally people know other people that might be able to help as well, and just build a network and just let people know. Normally if you're willing to work for free, people will look for you anyway. As much as I'd like to tell people not to work for free, it was a good sort of step in.
Can I just add to that really quickly? I was going to say, so also, I don't know that I didn't mention this, but one of the reasons for setting up UX-LING Corner was in order to give UX-LING an opportunity to actually get some positive, some actual practical experience. So I'm always working on lots of things as Enor, and they're either personal projects. I also run something on the side where I do lots of UX work, which is very little to nothing for charity or small organisations. I always need an extra pair of hands. So what I would say is, as well as messaging other people, reach out to myself and Enor, and maybe there's something we can do. It's worked successfully for Suzi. A couple of weeks ago, we got a new job. I'm in terms of Lucia, she's now high. And what it is we'll help you build a portfolio. We'll help you kind of do a bit of research. Tika, you worked a little bit into. So yeah, yeah.
I'm ready for you. I got a job this week.
Oh, did you?
Hey.
Oh, fantastic! Congratulations! Are you able to say who it's for? Right. That was a very dramatic announcement. Why did you send me a note?
So nice about you. Getting involved in helping.
Oh, honestly, it's not about. It's a little bit about. Fantastic. Yeah. So Jamie and whoever basically will give you some practical experience. Can't make any promises. Will help. So.
Just to add to that, as an employer, rather than somebody who used to be recruited, somebody who recruits people now for their own agency, exactly what Leah said. It's not about the fact that you've had a multitude of jobs, it's the fact that you can show experience in doing the jobs that we're looking for. Because as employers, we need to make sure that you're employable and presentable to a client. If you show me that through side projects, charity work, unpaid internships, even if they only lasted for 2 weeks, that shows me A, dedication, it shows you willingness to work, it shows your thought process, etc. And I don't care about your P45 and how many big names you work for, it's the thought process and the experience that counts. And if you can amass a whole bunch of them, then I'm more willing to have a look at you than if you just say, I'm a graduate and I haven't had a job and I haven't had a chance. So there's always a way to find it to go in.
Or even, I'd say as well, go as far as to say, just like loads of academics with no actual work experience. So I haven't got a degree. I was talking to Pat about possibly looking to do a PhD. I put in front of him.
Oh, do it.
I know, he's got one, really like. But yeah, but actually I don't, a good mentor-mentee relationship, the way that works is a mentor learns as much from the mentee as the mentee learns from a mentor. So for example, there's a bunch of stuff that I don't know that they're teaching in university about HCI, which I'm really interested in. And I want to do a PhD or something similar to, help my career. So ultimately they're, I'd say in a way, work experience or some kind of experience is even more important than just having a degree or something like that. Because also that's what you look for. And it doesn't matter if it's for a charity or free work or even a project that you've looked at and the input is what you for ages and you decided to redesign it and to present it and say, they never asked me to do this, but actually it's really irritating, really bad UX. This is what I think it could look like if they made these changes.
If anyone wants any help or anything, I'm happy to help as well. If you details later. Comes from a recruiter.
Cool. Any other questions? Okay, thanks so much. We're just going to do a quick changeover of devices. Suzi, here's a quick drink and then you can sit down again. Really soon afterwards.
People on YouTube can still see me. Okay, so there's your adapter. Which side is it? Left or right side? Yeah, I think everyone comes from somewhere different. So I used to be I've been a software engineer, BA, I'm now a senior UXer, and I've been doing UX for 8 years now. It's a case of where you come from. Make sure it's yes. Okay, so the notes there, you can stand on this side, I'll talk about. So hot. It's great. Let me know if you I think wait till Leah's, bit deeper voice.
Thank you so much. Okay. Right, I would like to introduce Suzi. I met Suzi when I was for a very complicated project, and that was a few months ago. Suzi tried out several careers before deciding to move to UX. Having done a degree in mechanical engineering, she worked in market research, IT support, computer programming, and product manager for the UX. In her spare time, Suzi likes to go out walking and cycling with Simon's 8. She also sings in the choir. So can we welcome Suzi?
I went to a job interview recently and I asked for some feedback at the end, and they said to me very nicely, they said, you ramble. So I'm just going to warn you now, I might ramble. If I do just kind of make cussing motions or pretend to fall asleep, then I'll try and take it. Okay, so this is me, UX research consultant. I'm going to go really poorly on the swans and ducklings and swan legs, yeah, so sorry. Nobody else has, thank God. Good luck, you know, there was always a risk that somebody else should have done it for me. So I've used this whole presentation to do lots of Googling of swans. Yeah, it's great to be referred to as a swan, but I must say most days I feel a bit more like one of these. So how to tell a story. This is all about how I got to the place I am at now. It's quite difficult to think of a way of telling a story which is kind of convoluted in an interesting way. The sort of story I have to tell at interviews quite a lot because my CV is a bit unusual, and I find that quite corny, quite embarrassing. So I thought I'd tell it in pictures. So this is the story. So I want you to pay close attention to this picture because there'll be a test on it later. I got my 8-year-old son to help me with doing this. He likes doing cookies and cartoons. So if there's any childlike bits of the drawing you notice, that's me. Okay, so where I started. This isn't where I started my career, this is where I started my career in UX. So before that, as I said, I was in all kinds of other things. I've had a very long career because I've lived a long life, a long and full life. But in 2006, I was at BBC. I've been there for 11 years. I was a product manager, and I had a fantastic job. I was head of the editor of BBC Music, and I got to go to Glastonbury and look after lots of really cool websites. And it was great, but I spent a lot of time in meetings. The other kind of times when you go to meetings about how nothing's getting done because everybody's in meetings. So they're all prioritising what needs to be done, but nobody has any time to do it because they're all spending all their days in meetings. And so that was what's happening to me. And meanwhile, I was learning about what was then called user-centered design, which is now called UX. And it's such a long time ago, it's even changed its name since I started. And I was learning a lot about that, and I was trying to be the person in my department who was pioneering all of that. So I sort of set up a little lab for user testing, and I did some card sorts and focus groups and etc. And I didn't actually have really much time to do my day job. So I thought it was probably a good idea to go off and actually study how to do those things properly, because I'm sure I was doing them in a very, very unprofessional and invalid way. So I thought I'd go off and go to university. So that's what I did. So I started my master's in September 2006. So this is me, the little person in the corner. You'll notice something about her. And I sort of time things quite badly, and I then had a baby in the middle of my course. This complicated matters quite a lot. I had the baby in January, I started the course in September. I had to change to studying part-time. As you can imagine, it was kind of distracting to be studying with a small child. I even tried to do an exam in May, which was in the end just before I had to pull out. It's a crazy idea. I'm not doing any sleep at all. And I was studying. It's a bit mad. So to add to the distraction of having a baby, my partner was also travelling a lot at short notice. He was travelling to oil tankers and strange locations and working nights, and he'd come back and he'd be nearly as tired as I was. So that wasn't a big help. So anyway, even though I was doing my degree part-time by now and I had to scrape over a period, I thought it would be a really good idea to get some part-time work in UX to gain some user experience. But I discovered it was really hard to do that, to find part-time work that would fit into sort of a 4-hour day, which would coincide with my son being in nursery, and also I'd be able to take any time I wanted when he was off sick, and all the different things you have to do when you've got a very small child. So I couldn't find any UX work, so I decided to make a detour, and I worked as a DSE assessor, which was really interesting, but very badly paid. And that was the first of many detours. By the time I graduated in 2010, the landscape of UX had completely changed. For starters, it's now called UX. Also, all the people coming on the course looked really young to me, because they were really young. iPhones have come along and everything, interfaces have changed completely. I was very lucky when I finished my degree, my lecturer recommended me for some work in UCL, so I was able to become a research associate within UCL doing effectively UX, and I was able to do it part-time and fit that in with my non-work life. So I worked on a feasibility project about social robots. We're developing robots as companions for the older adults, which, as you can imagine, ethically is a bit of an issue. You know, do you talk to your older adults with robots keeping company rather than a human? But so there were lots of issues around that, and part of my job was looking into the kind of issues that there would be. But I led some focus groups and I did diary studies, and I did basically contextual research, which was amazing. It was like all of my degree all wrapped up into one project. I practiced everything I learned in the space of about 10 months, working on their week as well, which is really good. And these are some of the prototypes we were working on. They were only pretend prototypes, we never made real world robots. But we got to play with real robots that were existing. They these are the dinosaur robots. But we got to give them to older adults to take home and then watch them interacting with them, which was really fun. So I love doing this type of research, and that's really why I decided that research was the bit of UX I wanted to be in. Also because when I was on my degree course, one of the lecturers said I wasn't very good at design, and I took that on board. And even though at the time I thought that was really mean and horrible, I actually think he was right. And I am good at research, so that was maybe a fair comment to make. I think what you were saying about being sometimes having a bit of tough love, sometimes it's good to hear something that's useful and directs you, rather than always hearing people give me platitudes to stroke me and say you love me. Anyway, so I thought this job was the launchpad for my new career, and I started the part-time work in UX. And this is actually what happens. There is nothing out there part-time, and there still isn't, as far as I can tell, unless you're already in a job and you decide to go part-time. And I've talked to a recruiter about this, and he said in his entire time recruiting for UX, which is 5 years, he's seen 2 part-time jobs advertised. So that's 2 jobs, and obviously they are very hotly contested for the people who need to work part-time or want to work part-time. So I spoke to some recruiters, they could help me. I interviewed for some full-time jobs with the idea that if they really, really liked me, they'd take me on part-time, but that didn't work either. As soon as I said I wanted to be part-time, they were a bit like, well, why are you wasting my time then? Because obviously we don't want to be part-time. And they had plenty of young UX graduates who were really, really keen and willing to work for very little money, very long hours, which is fantastic. But unfortunately, I didn't want to do that, so I couldn't do it because my partner was still travelling long hours, travelling off to all parts of the world, and I didn't really want to have my baby in full-time childcare. So instead of UX, I did some other things during the wilderness years. But my son had a lot of fun with this bit. He wanted to do like planes crashing and tanks like running over innocent bystanders, but I said it was alright to just do me falling into the ditch. That's what I did. Not all those pictures in here, hopefully writing. Yeah, so I did some other things. I did some SEO, and I built some websites, and all of my clients wanted the website for less than £500, which would rank number 1 for Hairdresser London or whatever, which really is impossible, because there are about 1 billion hairdressers in London, and pointless, by the way, because you don't want a hairdresser in London, you want a hairdresser in the particular place you're looking. And who Google's hairdresser London? It's kind of crazy. Anyway, so I had a lot of clients like that, and it was very hard work and very interesting. But yeah, not very lucrative. Meanwhile, all the students I'd studied with were working at top UX design agencies, and I felt like I'd completely lost my way. And it was quite a difficult time. It was my midlife crisis, except in my case, it really was midlife. So looking back at the wilderness years, I think I was learning so much more than I realised. So, for instance, I had to pitch for work a lot, and that's actually an incredibly valuable skill. Which I was recently asked about in an interview, and I said, "Have you ever pitched for work?" And I went, "No." And I thought, well, of course I have. Every time I wanted to get work as a designer, so design somebody's website, I had to go out and meet this person in a cafe, whatever, and convince them that I was, you know, I was the person they needed, and I would do the work they wanted. So I've learned that skill. I spent a lot of time designing content, which I think content is an incredibly important part of the user experience, and I think understanding content is something that maybe a lot of UX people need to do more of. So I think that was really valuable. I also worked for a while for UTest, who are a company in the States, and I ran some remote testing for them, so I was actually doing some proper UX there. But that was quite surreal because of the time difference. So I'd pick up my son from nursery at 3:30, but they would only come online at 3. So the only time I could have meetings with them was after my son had gone to bed, so 8 o'clock at night. So I'd like get my pajamas on, have a glass of wine in my hand, sit down and have a conference call with them. And they'd start talking about things like low-hanging fruit. I mean, I don't know about you, but isn't low-hanging fruit, doesn't that sound a bit rude to you? So I just used to find the whole thing hilarious. So I find it really difficult to take these people seriously. But having said that, the skills I learned were amazing, and it was a really interesting job. In fact, thinking what Sarah was saying about trying to find experience, I mean, that was really valuable experience, but it was something you can do without necessarily having a lot of UX knowledge. You can be involved in the unit testing, and you can do it in your own time, and you can visit around other communities. So that was really valuable. So how did I get out of the wilderness? It's a mixture of good karma, I think, and persistence. So a former colleague, I helped him get his job at BBC many years before, and I also mentored him and helped him when he was at BBC. And it's like people keep saying, you know, mentoring is a two-way thing. So he sort of mentored and helped me at the same time. And then when I helped him get into UX years before I really got into UX. Once I then needed a job, he helped me and he gave me some work. So I got to do some work at BBC again. I helped them do some research on search functionality, which is really good. That was a sort of first step back into proper UX. And in earlier this year, my partner's work situation changed and I was able to work full time. And it was like you couldn't hold it back. I was like a catapult, I'd be like pulled on a string, and I was like into orbit. It was so exciting to actually be able to finally properly work in UX, and I've just been doing all this fantastic work at agencies, and I haven't actually found a permanent job yet because I'm still kind of looking for that elusive part-time job in UX. But even if I don't, I can carry on contracting now. And I've been working really hard and really enjoying it. And a lot of people have put their faith in me. Leah's one of them. And I'm really grateful for that. Sorry?
Wasn't this place?
So yes, I feel very lucky. This looks like the end of my presentation. I'm afraid it's not, because I have been rambling a bit. So this is where I am now. I'm contracting at Seren at the moment in their Barclays accounts. One of the things about swans is they look very graceful on the surface, but underneath the surface they've got their legs going like that. And that's what I'm like at work. I might walk around with confidence and sure of myself, but actually I'm not at all. You know, I have to work really hard and it's all a real challenge. So the image I've tried to project is this graceful and composed image. But anyway, so what have I learned? What I've learned may probably just apply to any career. I think maybe it applies to UX a bit more because it's quite a young discipline. I mean that in the sense of young people in it, and also it's young as in it's not been around for that long. There's a lot of competition, and it's a very skills-based discipline. It's quite a technical discipline. You have to kind of know what you're doing. There's not very far you can wing it. Excuse the pun. So I don't have any amazing pearls of wisdom, but I can tell you what's helped me. So the first thing is I still suffer quite badly from imposter syndrome, which I think has been there's been a post about this on your LinkedIn.
Many creators.
Yeah, so basically unable to internalise their accomplishments, despite certain evidence, those exhibiting syndrome remain convinced that they are frauds and do not deserve the success they have achieved. So, oops, sorry, let me go back. So why do I suffer from it so badly? I think working from home, I was very isolated from other UXers. I did go to some events, but I just used to stand around at the periphery and drink a few glasses of wine and feel relaxed at the place and go home again. And if anything, it made me worse because people were giving presentations about stuff that got so far away from my experience that I couldn't really engage with it. And this wasn't around at that stage, sadly. And there are also issues around language and terminology. I mean, there's the low-hanging fruit thing, but there's also just terminology that comes along all the time. And I'm always the last person to get what things are. So people, when burger nabs came along, I was like, what's a burger nab? And so that always makes me feel like an imposter when somebody comes along and says something that I don't understand. Now, if I don't understand something, I just ask. And I think that takes confidence, and you sort of have to push yourself to do that. If you are the sort of person who feels a little bit like they should never admit they're wrong, or never admit they don't know something, I just ask. And I think if you know your job, it's fine to just say, actually, what's that? And if people do look at me a bit weirdly, I think, well, I can do my job, so I don't mind if you think I'm a bit weird. The other reason I think I suffer from imposter syndrome is I'm older than most of the people I know in UX, and there's no cure for that, but it's just going to get worse. But I think I just have to remind myself that I've got all kinds of really fantastic life experience, and any type of person that you can meet in the UX world, I've met at some point in my working life. So every kind of personality, difficult personality, I feel like I've met them all because I've had such a long working life. I can't see the bottom half of my notes, so I'm just going to have to wing it and go to the next slide. Yeah, the other reason I have imposter syndrome is I couldn't get a job. So I had to go, it became a downward spiral because when I went to interviews, I felt like an imposter. So what I've learned about job interviews, maybe that is that stuff from train spotting. This is actually me in interviews. Oh,
that's not true. I interview you. You do not sit and look like that. It's not true. I can guarantee it.
So, a while back I was working for the Telegraph, and I did a presentation to some stakeholders one day, and it didn't go very well. What happened was I walked in the room and there's this real kind of haze of testosterone, and lots of big guys like squaring up to each other, looking really like they have things to say, and there was a standing up meeting, so you had on the standing up table, and I wasn't wearing my heels, so I was about 6 inches shorter than the shortest person in the room, and it just didn't go very well. I didn't do a good presentation. I didn't come across very well. So anyway, and there was a lot of conflict. People were quite aggressive to me, or just there was a bad situation. Anyway, I went to some interviews a few weeks after that, and for some reason I got this kind of Tourette's thing that I feeling the urge to mention this thing. So they'd say to me, give me an example of a conflict situation. I go, oh yes, and I was in one the other week, and I started talking about it and tried to put a positive spin on it. And what I've learned is that's not a good idea. That may seem really obvious, but I think I didn't have another example, and because I didn't feel I was very good at dealing with conflict, I thought I didn't really have any better examples. But I think what I've learned about interviews is that you don't always have to answer the exact question. You don't have to have an answer for every single question they ask you. Sometimes you could say, okay, well, I didn't have an example which exactly addresses that, but maybe I can talk about the fact that I don't often get into conflict situations because I'm quite good at making stakeholders feel good. So you can kind of find ways of spinning things or just avoiding talking about things that feel good about. And I've only learned this after many years of going to interviews. Yeah, so hold on a second, sorry, I've lost my mouse. Good? God. All right, I'll just forget that. So the other thing is, consultants, I spent lots of time talking to recruitment consultants, and what I learned was that I wanted a job, they wanted somebody who would do the job, and that seems to be the same thing, but in fact, they think it's natural for a recruitment consultant to look for somebody who's an obvious fit, and because during that period wasn't an obvious fit. I had a very, very long career history, but none of the things in my career history said UX in them. I was older than probably most of the people they were looking for, and I only wanted to work part-time, so they couldn't really help me. And I think they became much more interested in me once I'd started contracting in UX this year, and that was a real shame, because I think maybe recruitment consultants would maybe try looking for people who do have a slightly different, unusual profile, because they can do different things. So what I did learn though was the people who helped me get jobs in UX were friends and colleagues. So all of my best breaks in UX have been from friends and colleagues. Until I started freelancing full-time this year, I've had loads of opportunities that come to me with colleagues, even just like, for instance, the place we test in the States. I worked all that was through somebody I was at university with. So I agree with all the speakers so far that it's really important to be kind to each other and work with your network, look after each other. And the karma thing, it does work both ways. One of my best opportunities came from somebody who I've helped previously. I mean, I'm not saying that you work always. It's not necessarily the people you help will help you, but it is about looking after each other. I think I didn't say it quite as eloquently as Antonia said it. You do all need to look after each other, and in fact, that's why I'm here. So hopefully, I've helped you a bit. Thanks for me.
Any questions for Suzi? Okay.
As someone who has two small children thinking about going into this industry and saying there's no part-time experience, what was confident?
Oh God.
Just to sign myself to the wilderness for another question?
No, so I have one great thing. I don't know if you're in UX or in research or design, but I did work for a while. I didn't mention this in this presentation. I worked for a while as an analyst for a remote testing company in the UK. Because of remote testing, they need people who can watch remote tests, and often that's the kind of work you can do from home. In fact, that was another springboard into where I was now. Not so I worked for what users do. They're a great company. They just do remote testing, that's all they do. And they hire lots of freelance analysts who just sit and analyze videos. And even though it's not massively exciting work, it's an amazing experience. You spend all day watching users. So I go to interviews and say, oh, you know, what can you do about this? And I go, oh, okay, so the other day I was doing a report on Marks and Spencer's or John Lewis or BT. So I just work for local companies, so that's one thing you can do. Apart from that, it's really hard. It's a real conflict in my mind what you do if you don't want to leave your kids on their own. There are things like kick your husband out of work. Kick your husband out.
There's a group called Moms in the US.
Is that?
Yeah. UX Moms, yeah. So they try to find companies that actually offer part-time jobs. So that is super good too.
There's also People Per Hour, which does, it's mostly creative, and we've heard of that, but there are kind of analysts and researchers that now pop up and design for People Per Hour, where you basically, People Per Hour become sort of beautiful work or whatever, but you kind of do a profile, etc. I don't know how successful it would be next, but there's certainly designers that are on it. Yeah, and you can sometimes filter for jobs where they're home-based versus not, but you are right in terms of kind of a lot of people want to work remotely.
Well, I'm pushing my way into Sarah. I'm trying to get part-time work into Sarah, and I'm just leaving my way in. I'm making sure I'm indispensable. When I get in, I'll leave my way in for you.
Yeah.
Does that have anything to do with things like agile project management, the fact that it's so intense and everybody's involved in their own that's what makes it.
You know what, I think that the irony of this is that Agile could work pretty well, but it's very kind of, it's got set time, set scripts. So you could quite easily work in a part-time around that. I think it's just a culture thing.
No, I think it's definitely culture. Because even, you know, if you look around the industry, there are some workplaces and jobs where, you know, they're so flexible with your working hours, whether you're parent or not, where you can literally just do like a 10:30 to 3:30, or some people that allow you to work from home whenever you want. And there are other places where they're so rigid that you have to work 9 to 6. Basically, that's it. So it's kind of about culture. There was a gentleman here who had his hand up for a question a second ago. Are there any questions around here? Suzi? Oh, no.
So one thing again from the employer's perspective, we at New to actually do allow people to have the flexibility to do stuff, because we generally say, okay, this is the job, this is how much we plan for it. If we plan 5 days and you can do it at 4, brilliant. We can work around that. However, big however, it is very rare that we meet a candidate who can demonstrate to me that they can actually do that, right? So the onus is on you as a candidate to convince the employer that whatever you say you've estimated for 5 days, I can do it 4, and this is how I'm going to do it.
But I think, why should I do a 5-day job in 4? Why can't I just do a 4-day job in 4? Why can't I do the jobs that we design around 4 days? And I don't think that there should be an onus on people to be able to do more work in time. In fact, that was what happened when I used to work 4 days a week. I was ending up doing 5 days. There needs to be more jobs. Like, there needs to be more jobs.
That seems to be a bigger challenge than just UX. I think. In speaking of the UX point, from a Valsay perspective, we have a core of working with clients on site, and I think until you build that relationship of trust up, it's very difficult for you to say, I'm going to be on your site 2-3 days a week, and I'm going to be working at my office or from home the rest. Yeah, absolutely. I think there's and we've had projects where it's taken 6 months to almost a year of people being there full time for them to go, you can work Friday from home, or you can work. I think it's that.
You know what the problem is that unfortunately there are some people in a team or a company that take advantage of the flexibility of a culture of work, and that unfortunately ruins it for everybody else. So they'll go somewhere and they'll say, oh, you know, if you start working from home 1 day a week or whatever, even though you can deliver, it means that everybody else will do that, and there will be people who take the piss. And that's been my experience, that actually it's kind of, in a way, it's a lot, in most organisations, whether corporate or not, more corporate, it's kind of a perception thing. So often people, unfortunately, are judged on perception of the perception of them being able to do the job, not so much them actually physically being able to deliver what they promised. And so if you have a perception of somebody who's really hard working, but then there's other people in the team who perhaps aren't, and kind of take them on as a sort of an inch that the company's giving you, then it does have a knock-on effect, I think. So,
can I just say, our manager at work is our head of UX. She's in the office 3 days a week, works from home half a day a week, and then earns a day and a half a week off. So it does happen. So
I think that's
it's not a question, but
those jobs aren't advertised. So if you're in a company, you can do that. But I'm not in a position to start out 5 days and then go 4 days or 3 days. So it's how to get a foot in the door without starting out full time.
I think the 2-3 month start.
Yeah,
and then
any other questions for Suzi before we just move on? Great. No? All right. Thank you so much. Brilliant. I love it. Mary, it'd be really helpful for anyone and I if you could put some post-it notes up and tell us what you think you might want to see for the 2016 event. We can make it up if we want it to be informed by you. Thank you.